Kia ora, Malay. I'm Veisinia Maka. I originally grew up in both Pamua and in Mangere, but now I reside in Olmiston. My mom is from she hails from Folaha, and my dad's from Longoteme. So both hardy villages and both hardy suburbs. So yeah, that's me. It was pretty hard. I'm not gonna lie, both emotionally and mentally. Um, I was, I guess my profession or background is I'm a full time student, but as well as that, I also dabble in the youth advocacy space. So I currently facilitate and run my local youth voice. And then, as well as that, I also work a few part time jobs just to help around the house. And so, for me, yeah, it was emotionally draining. It came to my second semester exams, and I found myself really having to really dig in deep. There was moments where I really wanted to just stop because I was so drained. But I think if it wasn't for my friends and support system as well as my family to really remind me of my why, I don't think I would have made it through my exams. So I think my second semester was a lot more harder than my first semester. I think I was completely drained, trying to do everything, but also trying to support other people as well as support myself at the same time. So yeah, I found it quite hard. For me, it's about really enabling young people as well as young Pacific people outside or out in East Oakland. I think South Oakland does an amazing job with supporting the Pacific youth. East Oakland, we're slowly getting there, slowly but surely. And I think for me, it's about making sure that they're able to see their value in those spaces. I come from spaces such as Pemua, Glen Innes, Mount Wellington, places that are currently going through gentrification. And so having to remind them of their why and really remind them of their worth as well and trying to reiterate that. I think this is a community that has been affected by housing and displacement and issues of, education, issues with, employment. So it's just really just about reaffirming them. I think a lot of Pacific youth struggle with self-confidence. And if Pacific youth do have confidence, sometimes it's not from a positive light, if that makes any sense, or a positive space. So just trying to reiterate that positivity for them and trying to make sure that they're able to see themselves in this space. I think a lot of people in local government, or they see local government as something that's quite distant to them. So it's just about reminding them and reaffirming them that they have this, that they have it under control, and reaffirming their ideas as well. I think a lot of people haven't reaffirmed their ideas, and maybe that stemmed off the education system, but just trying to reiterate and trying to remind them that they're intelligent enough to be in this space, that they're good, and that they're worthy of being in this space. So a lot of it is reminding them about their self-confidence, but enabling them to participate in local government. It's really exciting, being able to see a shift in representation, and hopefully in governance as well, and just seeing a lot more young people actively participate. I think that was one of the most exciting things, to see that on Twitter, see that on Facebook, Instagram. Really, people, especially young Pacific people, playing an active role in educating each other, but also supporting each other and sharing space. I think sometimes in politics, a lot of people don't share space. To see that in a positive light was honestly one of the most beautiful things ever, because I think there's only a certain group of people that is small and selective that have always been in politics, and that are young. But to see young people of different backgrounds as well, you have musicians, you have poets, you have athletes. I think it was honestly beautiful to see an array of opinions rather than just it stem off one narrative, and come off from different narratives at the same time. So yeah, it was cool to see a bit of sovereignty, a bit of autonomy going there, and just seeing young people just feel confident enough to speak. I think sometimes politics can be daunting, and so to see young people just say, you know what, who cares? I have an opinion and I'm willing to share it, is honestly the most beautiful thing ever. Oh, that's such a hard one. I think for me, a big highlight was just making it through the semester or making it through the year. I think like this is a big highlight. When I finished my first exam and then I started getting my exam results back, I was just like, you know what, I'm so thankful that I made it through. Because there could have been moments where I just decided, oh, you know what, I probably should stop. I can't handle this. But to push myself and to have other people support me, both emotionally and I guess spiritually as well, has been such a huge blessing. But yeah, I think just surviving, just surviving was one of my I think was a huge accomplishment. But as well as that, just being able to see young people participate in local government as well. My local youth voice, some of them had never wrote a submission before, so they wrote a local submission to the local board in our local area. And so for me, it's amazing to see them, you know, come from a place of insecurity in their own opinions and themselves, to see themselves as quite confident in saying, actually, you know what, we have potholes outside KFC and we don't know why they're there. And I think that's the beauty of politics, you know, it's just the small things that matter. And so, yeah, it's just, I think that was a huge success. But yeah, just seeing people thrive despite the circumstances. And just, yeah, just seeing everyone doing well, being okay, and just coming out of it on top was a huge, I think, highlight for me, just to see everyone succeed and be happy. I learned the importance of relationship building. And I think for me, like, I sometimes, you know, when you're in this space, it's all about outcomes after outcomes after outcomes. It's about, did we reach outcomes? You know, how many case studies did we reach? How many participants did we reach? But I think for me, it's understanding that, like, that's not important. Outcomes isn't the overall objective. Sometimes it's just the small things in life. It's about people being happy, and that being an objective and an outcome. Sometimes it's not physical outcomes, and sometimes in organizations, sometimes we focus on that, which I guess, yeah, absolutely, you know, funding agreements, but then it loses the beauty of it, and then sometimes that's where, like, people become, I guess, case studies, and there's a lack of empathy there. But yeah, I think for me, I understood the importance of relationship building, especially in a time where you're isolated. You know, just understanding that, like, there's people out there that are wanting to share space, wanting to have conversations. And so it's important to share space with that and be okay with that. I just want to be happy, and I just want to be able to do things I love. But I think one thing I realized is about telling myself that it's okay not to do everything. I think for me, I have this issue of, like, FOMO, the fear of missing out. And so just being okay with the idea that, like, I don't need to do everything. I'm okay in just sitting there and watching other people succeed, and living through that. Sometimes living through that is just enough. And I think just trying to remind myself, like, that is enough, rather than having to experience everything in a whole year. So I think for me, it's just putting myself first in terms of my mental health. I think that's something that I tried to do this year, but was also quite difficult at the same time, having to support so many people in terms of being the oldest daughter, and I guess oldest sibling, and then having to support a youth council as well that's filled with, 15 young people, and then having to support, friends. I think for me, I realized, like, during that entire process, although I wouldn't change it for the world, I also found myself really drained. And so you can't help people if you have nothing in your I guess your tank. I think I'm just really proud of everyone, despite everything and despite the circumstances. Like, I think I want to acknowledge the idea that, like, you still made it on top, like, you're still here, and I think that's something that we should be proud of. It may not have been the best year in terms of maybe you didn't do well academically, financially, but I think, like, you're still here, and I think 2021 is an opportunity to change that narrative or do whatever you want to do. But I think circumstances like this are always temporary, and so it's always about coming out, on top out of it. And so, yeah, just be proud of yourself.